This may sound absolutely wild for you to hear, but you are just one thought away from massive success. Hi, I'm Jaryd Krause. I'm the host of the Buying Online Business podcast, and today I'm speaking with Itamar Marani, who is regarded as one of the top performance, high-level mindset coaches in the world. He's a former Israeli Special Forces operative, the youngest federal agent and air marshal in Israel's history. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt who's competed at world-class level, and he's a mentee of the Mossad's chief psychologist. He has since coached hundreds of 6 to 9 figure entrepreneurs, executives, traders, and pro athletes who break through performance plateaus, eliminate mental drag, and operate at their highest level under pressure. His clients have exited companies for 9 figures, raised hundreds of millions of dollars, and entered top 10 rankings in the world, among other results. And in this podcast episode, it was a fascinating chat around what are the 3 biggest bottlenecks that you have when you're wanting to achieve something. We go into detail into those. And a part of understanding those is knowing what your most direct path is, which Itamar talks about in his latest book. How do you work out what the most direct path is when you're trying to achieve something? He shares an example of his when he was in the military. We also talk about the 3 biggest performance traps. So once you realize what the most direct path is and the biggest bottlenecks in your way and you're on your path to achievement and you're already performing, what are the top 3 traps that stop you from going to that next level? And why? We share stories of where I was a victim of many of these, where Itamar was as well, and also many of his clients, and how this relates to acquiring a business, relates to growing a business, and what are the biggest things that are getting in your way. And then once you have bought your first business, what's stopping you from performing to scale that business and or build a portfolio of businesses. This is such a valuable episode. We do talk about buying businesses. If you haven't got my due diligence framework, it takes the guesswork out of buying businesses. It's saved people millions of dollars and made people millions of dollars. You can get that. There'll be a link to that in the description. But for now, this is such a valuable episode. You're absolutely going to love it. If you like me and you love mindset and you're wanting to achieve anything, listen to this maybe multiple times. Also, there's another podcast episode from Itamar that we did, which is episode 240, and I share that in the podcast as well. Enjoy. Itamar, welcome back to the pod.
Thank you for having me again. Good seeing you.
Absolutely. Guys, Itamar was on the pod on episode 240. It was a great podcast, actually. We talked a lot about emotional intelligence. The episode's called How Emotional Intelligence is Your Secret Weapon to Unlocking Your Greatest Potential in Business. And we're going to dive deeper into that today, even more. Not just emotional intelligence, but just some, I don't even want to put words to it because you've got your own ways of explaining these things. But I guess the first thing I want to ask you, Itamar, is that, you talk about limiting beliefs so much being the biggest bottleneck. What are the most sort of common ones you've seen in entrepreneurs that they face when they're either looking at acquiring a business, exiting their business, or scaling?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Also, I'll just say a little bit of a nuanced thing here. The way I would describe it, it's not necessarily, most people think when you talk about emotional intelligence is how can I perceive you, Jaryd? Am I aware of your emotions? This is my EQ, so to speak. But there's also a level of emotional fortitude where I recognize that I have a certain feeling, I'm feeling a feeling, but I don't have to succumb to that emotion. I can still do the logical thing. Now, with that said, the biggest limiting belief, let's call it, that I see entrepreneurs have, acquiring, buying, whatever, when it's a big change, is this story that they're not even aware they have in their head that I'll be ready to once. They have this frame in their head. I'll only be able to do that once. And a lot of times, these are just stories we make up, or it's an example we saw one time from somebody else in our mastermind or a business friend, whatever it may be. And we hear ourselves, I can only do it once I get to that level. But the reality, a lot of times, is simply not true. And when you bring that to the light and you actually expose it and assess it, they're like, you know what, I don't have to wait that long. I can actually do it now with everything I have in place. So I think that is, if you had us for the number one, that would be the number one.
That's a form of self-sabotage, right?
Yeah. You limit yourself.
Because of the story.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest one, right? And where does that fear, you mentioned, it sort of comes from a story that you may have heard or something you've watched or societal conditioning. How do people, then we're talking about emotional intelligence, is it people understanding that and becoming conscious that they have that story and then doing the logical thing anyway? Like you mentioned before, you can still have that emotion and that fear of I I can't do this until I've got X thing, and it might be resources, time, whatever it is, and then just doing it anyway, like understanding that's there.
It's like yes and no. So
okay.
At a certain point, it is still going to feel uncomfortable and you're going to have to do it. However, just trying to say, I am really, really afraid, I'm just going to push through, it's not sustainable to consistently do that. And also it can cause a lot of self-sabotage because you get to the 99-yard line. And then just before that fear gets a bit too big. Maybe you lost a little bit of sleep. The kids are up, you're a bit compromised. And all of a sudden you back off. So the process I like to take the entrepreneurs that I work with through is actually before we do any of the limiting belief stuff is to figure out what is the most direct path to success. Now, for a lot of the people that are listening to this podcast, they've probably already figured out that the most direct path to success is either selling their business or acquiring it. It's like, cool. Okay. Now what would be required in order to do that? And a lot of times through that, they recognize like, okay, I actually don't need all that story. Like I'm ready to do it.
You talk about the most direct path in your book. And what does that mean? How can entrepreneurs use it to, how do they find the direct path so they can block out the noise and just know what the simple steps are to get that result they're looking for? Say they're looking at acquiring a business and they've got all this noise and they might need finance or, how to understand to run the business first and things like that, which is definitely limiting beliefs. I've purchased businesses that I have no idea how to run, but you learn it from the seller anyway. They're going to teach you everything you need to know. And then you can continue to grow it with mentors and hire in experts like Facebook ad experts that if I don't know how to run Facebook ads, you should get somebody involved. There's so many limiting beliefs there. So how do people find, in this instance, their goal is to try and acquire a business. How do they find the most direct path?
By emotionally detaching themselves.
Okay.
And here's what I mean by that. So I'll share a story. Where I first learned this was when I was working undercover. So as part of the role, I was working in a certain country and we had to protect an asset at an airport. And at the start of the day, called my superior officer, he would always have tabletop drills. We would sit all of us together and he'd be like, Itamar, so this is a scenario. You have the asset over here. The terrorist is coming over here and you recognize the terrorist. You're 100% sure we have the intel. And he throws a bag that you're 100% certain is a bomb at the asset. What do you do? And my first instinct, as a very over testosterone 20-year-old, I was like, oh, confirmed terrorist, confirmed attack, I shoot to kill. And my boss kind of looked at me disappointed. He's like, why would you do that?
It's already too late.
Confused. No, but I confused. I asked him, like, I think I'm the most qualified operative here. That's what I should do. The most qualified fighter on the ground. He said, but why would you do that? Kind of bit my tongue. And then he asked me about, why are we here? Is it to kill terrorists or to protect the asset?
Exactly.
And I was like, it is to protect the asset. So what should somebody else, not you with all your biases and your over-aggression, if somebody else wanted to protect the asset, what would they do? And he's like, oh, he would evacuate the asset. He wouldn't worry about the terrorists. And it was a great lesson that a big part of separating is not asking what should I do or what do I need to have in place, but simply externalizing and saying, what would somebody else need to have in place in order to do this? A lot of times, like you said, you can figure out that person could probably figure out the business from the business owner. They could hire somebody for the Facebook ads. And it's a thing where I'm sure you've noticed that it's so much easier to give friends advice than to figure out our own problems because we're not attached emotionally.
We're not in it.
It's just that, yeah, exactly. And we don't, it's hard. It's not pleasant to say, but we care about others' discomfort infinitely less than our own. And so if we detach it, we see the logic in it. So the most direct path you can usually just find by saying, if somebody else, not me, but if somebody else wanted to achieve this goal, and let's say they were even less competent than I am, less intelligent, less driven, less disciplined, what would they need to do? What would be the 1 to 3 key things they did that would override their lack of competence and drive, whatever it may be? And usually it acts as a forcing function to see the truth. And then you're like, okay, that is those 1 to 3 actions. That's your most direct path to success that you've either been knowing, but avoiding, or you've had an emotional blind spot from.
So it's kind of like at the start is remembering what the goal is, right?
Yeah.
And then just making logical steps to get to that achievement straight away. In the instance of acquiring a business, people get so wrapped up in what type of business it is, how much money it's making, the niche, the industry, whatever it is. Most people listening to this podcast, their goal is to replace their income. Yep. And their goal isn't to buy a business. That's not their goal. right? That's the vehicle. And they get in the way, that they get so stuck in like the choosing of the vehicle that they forget, like, we just like, if we want to get to having our income replaced and have that, what's the most direct path to that is just buy a great online business as soon as you can versus trying to find a unicorn for 2 to 3 years and then not getting there. Yeah.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
So here's the paradox of this. Like, this is true and the reality is, the unfortunate reality is that we're emotional creatures, not logical ones. Like, from what you just shared, it sounds like you actually have a superpower where you're okay with ambiguity in life. Like, I will buy this business and then I will figure it out from the owner. I'll figure out Facebook ads. It's okay. However, most people, one of their like core success killers is trying to avoid uncertainty. So whenever there's a little bit of uncertainty, they just try to dig. Because again, like back in the day, when we evolved, uncertainty could mean life or death. That little rustling in the bushes in the savannah, that could be a predator. And if we're not hyper aware of this stuff, we can trick ourselves into thinking that actually because I'm not exactly sure about it, I should stop. This is a danger sign. When instead of just something you can figure out, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some, you said that's like a major core success blocker. What are some other ones that people might be facing? Because we're talking about the top 3 performance traps you've got. I don't know if they're the same. Like, I don't know if you want to tie that in or not, but.
Pleasure. Yeah. So what we talked about in the book is there's 3 success killers and 3 performance traps.
Yeah.
So the success killers are what cause us to act irrationally. They're the core of why we feel that, it's something that doesn't feel right. I can't move forward. Mm-hmm. And then the performance traps are how different people react in irrational ways. So the success killers are, number 1, that you avoid uncertainty, which was the big thing. Like, everybody, unless I have all the information, I can't go through. Unless I know 5 steps ahead, it's too dangerous. And like you're saying, you can figure things out, right?
Well, I mean, you're not going to absolutely understand everything through your whole existence in life. And
yes,
the logical, like, we can talk logically here when we're not in a story, that it doesn't make sense to just try and know everything when we know logically that growth happens outside the comfort zone, which is a pretty corny thing to say, but outside the comfort zone is just the unknown zone, the uncertainty zone as well.
Yeah.
So what are the other 2? So if that's the biggest one, what are the other 2?
But I want to jump in on what you said, because I think you said something really powerful there. That I think this is the biggest thing to understand. That if someone's listening and they find themselves a little bit stuck, like they know what they should be doing, but they're not doing it, is to accept that maybe there's actually no problem here. You're just an emotional creature, not a logical one. That's what humans are. And your brain has not yet learned. Like, again, we evolved 100,000 years ago, like going other cliches of the growth zone, comfort zone. So, we evolved to survive, not to thrive. Mm-hmm. It's that. And your brain reacts to any uncertainty, anything that you're unsure about, with the same level of severity as a life or death threat. And a lot of times just recognizing that and all of a sudden becoming aware that, like, oh, I feel these nerves. It doesn't mean anything's wrong. It's just a feeling that I feel because there's some uncertainty here. It can go a really, really long way. Just to be able to understand what the actual issue is, so to speak. That there's no issue, just a feeling.
I think that's amazing for people to understand in the way that you said, when you have that fear, the feeling is like it's a life or death threat when it may not actually be. And to sort of be understand and be okay and realize that it may feel like a life or death situation, but when you're conscious of that, you can realize and sort of step away from it and look at it perspectively or objectively and see that, like, okay, it's like, what's the worst case scenario here? Is it really death?
Exactly. And a frame that I think is very helpful for people, if this is resonating so far, is to recognize there's all going to be different parts of you. There's going to be, let's call it like a lower level you and a higher level you. Lower level you, that's your amygdala, the part that evolved 100,000 years ago, and it's ultra paranoid and it's completely irrational at times. Like, if you've ever talked to someone and you're in an argument and you recognize they're being very emotional and they've completely like thrown logic out the door, you're talking to that part of them. And we've all experienced that with other people. So the truth is that we also do it ourselves. And then there's a higher level.
Right?
Yeah, internally. Yeah. Like in our internal talk. And like how you said it internally, that's the beauty of it. If you can recognize I have these 2 players, so to speak, I can also suddenly stop just thinking this is how I am, this is how I think. Say, oh, there's a part of me right now that is starting to stress out because there's uncertainty. But I can choose not to listen to that part of me. I can listen to the rational part of me and ask, like, what would I tell somebody else to do? And follow that advice. And all of a sudden, once you're aware of that, you're all of a sudden in a position of power where you're not just pulled by your emotions in every direction. But you can say, wait, am I being emotional right now or am I being logical? Which part of me is winning out, so to speak? And that uncertainty is what really pings that lower part of you to pump up, so to speak, to start getting volatile. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and become illogical.
Yeah.
Versus logical.
So like as we were saying, the other two, the first one is you try to avoid uncertainty. That's the big thing. The second thing is, again, we are tribal creatures. And even though logically we know right now, like you live in Bali, you were just in Mexico, we can travel around the world. We can always find other people to connect with. Our brains, that lower part of us, doesn't believe that to be true because it grew up in a very scarce environment. There's maybe 50 people per tribe where food was very scarce. Mating options was very scarce. And so was protection. So you had to always accommodate, like, how do I fit into this tribe? So the second success killer is that you optimize for approval. This is, I can't even have the conversation because it might hurt the relationship, or I can't do this because, and your brain confuses this approval for danger. Like that's the big thing here.
That's huge. I remember when I was buying my first and second online business, I wouldn't tell a soul for the first two because I just wouldn't fit in. Who the hell is this plumbing guy to speak to his colleagues like, look, I'm going to buy an online business. And when I did open up after the acquisition and, I had my colleagues say to me like, look, what are you doing wasting your money and time with this? It's never going to work. Right. Yeah. And I knew at that stage, all I wanted to do was fit in, but I knew that if I looked at it objectively, I actually didn't really want to fit in. Like I wanted a different lifestyle. So I was lucky that I had that perspective that I don't want to fit in this realm. I guess that could be a tool that people could use is that maybe they want to fit in a different community and a different bracket of people, which could be a tool would you say that would be a helpful tool?
I think it's a phenomenal one. I think trying to go against these things in a black and white way, saying like, I'm just not going to need approval anymore. It's unrealistic. It goes very strongly against our wiring.
Without any thing backing it up, right? Like, just to say it. Yeah.
But if you can be strategic and say, who do I want approval from? All of a sudden, you go from a place where your subconscious is getting pulled in whatever direction you are to recognizing whose opinion do I care about and whose do I not? And you can optimize your behaviors around that. I think what you're saying here is great. It's perhaps naive to think that we can overcome these things, but if we can frame them in a certain way, they can actually be to our benefit. Like if you want to, for example, buy an online business, if you put yourself in it and you've never done so before, if you put yourself in an environment, a mastermind, whatever it be, where other people are doing it, guess what? You'll want their approval in some way and it's going to have a positive impact on you actually achieving that goal.
Right. Exactly. So you can use it to your advantage and then it can be
absolutely
disadvantageous. Yeah. And my perspective of I'm going to use it to my advantage by trying to put myself into that realm of all that community of people. Okay. Yeah. So we've got uncertainty being the biggest, approval fitting in, and the third, performance trap.
I want to say just one more thing about approval. This I think is very relevant to your audience.
Okay.
This is where people usually back off in the wrong ways during negotiation. They stop looking at it as a math problem and start saying like the other person, I'm being too pushy or I'm being too aggressive. And all of a sudden they take actions they regret because they got emotionally compromised. So if that you've ever felt like you're a people pleaser in some way or you want people's approval, recognize that this is actually where you have to be very cautious. This is where you have to be on high alert during the negotiations that again, that part of you doesn't win out. So that's number 2. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that we're going to move into talking about the Mr. Nice Guy thing as well, which is going to lend to this massively. It's a tricky balance when you're buying a business. And this is why I even have a job is working as an advisor. So I can prevent the emotions creeping in and sabotaging a deal. And you can use it like you said, in this instance, you can use the approval to your advantage in negotiations, but it can also be a disadvantage if you go one way too hard, too strong. And it's pretty key to have the relationship intact. And the way that you frame your negotiation is that you're not looking for their approval, but you're looking to make their life better by giving them what they want. And then they're going to approve that and approve you anyway. And it's a win-win versus the opposite way.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, even if they don't fully 100% approve of you as a person, think of you as the most amazing person in the world, but this is just logically a win-win for everyone.
Right.
That's what it is. And I think that's a big part of it, is accepting uncertainty, accepting that some people won't approve, whether it's your old circle, or even the people you're negotiating with. They won't think you're the most generous person in the world. So again, like, what is your desire here? Is it emotionally to be satisfied? I have complete certainty. Everybody loves me and thinks I'm the best, or to get the outcomes you want in life for yourself, for your family, for those you care about.
Coming back to the uncertainty thing, the uncertainty is riddled through all of this, isn't it? Which is why you mentioned it was the big one. So is there anything else you would like to add based on approval?
No, I'll segue to the next one, which is that you seek validation. And they sound kind of similar to wanting approval and seeking validation. Yeah. Because again, we're tribal creatures. It's a big pig. However, wanting approval is saying that during the course of the negotiation, or while I'm doing this thing, I hope people will think well of me. Seeking validation is before I even start, I have to know that it's okay for me to do so. And this is where a lot of what we talked about in the beginning, that I'll only be ready to buy when I have this amount of cash already in the bank, or when I have this amount of knowledge ready, or when I do this or that. And it's basically this whole perfectionism thing. Like, I fear that I'm not enough. So if I have the perfect database of everything I need, then maybe I can pull it off.
Does that stem from the wanting to not be judged by others? For example, say like, I want to buy a business, but if I don't have the knowledge and the money to do so, people are going to think of me as a crazy person. So
I think the optimizing for, like, I'll put it this way, the optimizing for approval, that's how do I relate to the world? I want other people to think well of me. The seeking validation is that I don't think personally that I am good enough to do so. Like, for example, I, Itamar, am not good enough to buy a 7-figure business or an 8-figure business because I don't think I'm smart enough. It's not about how other people will perceive me. It's like, I don't think I can pull it off. So I'm going to find all these ways to seek validation for myself and be like, oh, let me buy a small business, like a 5-figure one, just waste a lot of my years of life on that one, or whatever it might be. All these kind of ways that I give myself emotional comfort, but I make the path a lot longer to actually achieving my result. That's what we're saying. It's like the opposite of the most direct path.
Wow. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because there's so many people listening to this that and have done this in the past, as they want to dip their toe in the water. Yeah. Do you have any other examples of dipping? Because dipping your toe in the water with buying a business is like you said, the path to success, the goal is to replace your income. But by dipping your toe in the water and buying something smaller, it's not the most direct path. It can be quite indirect. And if anything, it opens you up to possibly more failure, because a smaller business is typically makes less money, has less risk, and you've got to go through many more hurdles to get to that replace your income and own a 7-figure, 8-figure business.
Yeah. Well, let me actually reverse it to you. You're the expert in this niche. What do you think that are ways people trick themselves into getting ready to finally have the proper acquisition or the proper sale?
Definitely money is a big one. Definitely they feel like they need to have the experience, or like know how to run the business, or at least understand the business. And I think it's based, the biggest thing is that they, like you said, they don't feel ready.
Yeah.
Because
like,
of all these
here's a wild
things.
thing. What if you're not ready and that's still okay?
Yeah.
And that's an interesting frame.
Absolutely.
Because again, like, going back to our evolutionary biases, we think if I'm not ready, that means there's going to be imminent danger here, catastrophic life or death. If you can have a frame, what if I'm not ready, but that's still okay? What if I can actually learn on the job? You're like, you know what? That's wild. I never thought about that way. Like, what if it's okay if there's uncertainty there? What if it's okay that some people are not maybe going to disapprove of you, but you can already say, I know these people are going to disapprove of me. I accept it ahead of time. I preemptively accept all these negative comments from these people, all these flops, whatever it may be. And I also expect that I'm going to lay them in my face a couple times, but that's okay because I can get up and I'm going to get much closer to my goals much faster. If you can accept that emotional cost, you can achieve a lot more. It's part of the game, so to speak.
I think what I've said to people before is that, like, it's along the lines, if you are not ready, and it being okay, is that, like, maybe you just need some more frustration before you go, fuck it, I'm really ready. Or maybe like you just need some more pain. Like, say, for example, in a relationship where you can clearly see your friend is struggling and not happy in the relationship, and you're outside of it and you know their life could be, with 100% certainty, likely better, right? Or not likely, but you just know that they're going to be a happier person because you knew who they were before that. And you tell them what they need to hear, and it goes in one ear and out the other, but maybe they just haven't felt enough pain for them to go away and do something about it. Or maybe somebody that's looking at buying a business is just, they haven't had another few years of just hating their life and hating their job before the ambition is high enough to them to go away and achieve it. What are your thoughts on that?
Can I offer another layer on top of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll go back to the relationship bit that you said. And this is something actually I wrote about in the book. When I first started coaching, we would break down people's most direct path. We'd break down any beliefs that would be in their way, but like why this is actually a good idea. They'd understand it's a good idea. And people would start taking action for like 2-3 weeks. And then they'd revert back. And it was this weird process. And what I had to figure out is that we get something good out of the things that are holding us back in life. Otherwise, if there was absolutely nothing good about them, we'd move on from it. For example, the relationship, like people sometimes just don't like being alone, or especially if you're young and hormone driven, just like having a sexual partner is really nice, even if afterwards they make you feel really bad about yourself. And a lot of times it's just about accepting what is the good that I'm getting out of it that's blinding me a little bit. So again, with most of these things, the reason you're not taking action is because you're still getting something out of it, out of not taking action that you like. It's short-term comfort. It's not the good thing, but unless you really understand what that is and make peace with it, you're not going to move on because your brain's going to be like, oh, no, this is actually okay. We can stick with it. I think also on a personal level, we've all stayed in relationships too long at times because we weren't willing to give that up. So for anyone who's not like stepping on the throttle with the business, like what are you getting out of not doing it? And it could be just emotional comfort, nothing more. Just like I get to avoid the uncertainty. I get to avoid the people disapproving. I get to avoid testing myself to see if I'm even good enough. I get to avoid all that stuff with all these stories that I tell myself.
I've got 2 examples. I love that. And thanks for adding that layer on. Yeah. Is that with the relationship one, some people may feel like there might be emotional abuse or, whatever it is, or something not great in the relationship. And they just like the feeling that they have somebody that they can speak to about everything, just hold on to like, that's what they like about it. And it's the same with replacing your income. We call it the golden handcuffs. That's the benefit that they are getting from it. And it masks the fact that they are in don't have the most secure future. Sometimes people have the idea that a job is a very secure thing to have versus being an entrepreneur, whereas like, you don't have control over your employment as much as you do when you are self-employed. So there's those benefits that people may tell themselves irrationally as well. Yeah.
Can I jump in with something?
Please do.
To what you're saying?
Yeah.
So it's a difference. Let's put it this way. Entrepreneurship, if you're a capable individual who's driven, you actually have, I think, a lot more long-term security of your future, of your destiny than being in a job somewhere. However, what you're also going to have a lot more, regardless of how capable you are, is a lot more volatility.
Uncertainty.
And it comes back exactly where I was going with that. So like if you're okay with that uncertainty and accept that volatility over the long term, you're actually going to have more certainty. That's the paradox. You just got to accept that in the short term, it's going to feel a lot of times uncertain. It's a big part of it, like what we'll talk is you have to be okay feeling a feeling. But once you understand what that feeling is and you can recognize if it's valid or not, that's when you're in a position of power. When it's being reckless.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. On the complete flip side to that is understanding what you love about your job or what you hate about your job and getting to a point that like maybe you're not ready to buy a business, which is totally against why I'd be doing this podcast and wanting you to buy a business, which is okay as well though, because if you understand that like I'm willing to keep that $80,000 a year, $100,000 a year role because it gives me this income and I don't like the job necessarily, but that 100K income is worth staying in this position because of that. And that's okay as well, right? At least then you don't have to listen to like me or other entrepreneurs saying like you should buy a business and then feel bad about yourself because everybody these days is an entrepreneur and it's like our egos are touted that we've achieved this thing and this is what the rest of the world should do. And not everybody can be an entrepreneur and that's okay as well.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is very true. It's what happens in most people's midlife crisis is that they, let's call it the job route. They take a job that gets them the money, then they get the house, they get the car, and then at 40, they're like, wait, I'm not feeling the feelings I thought this would give me. It's because they worked from the outside in. They first saw like, what is everybody else doing around me? And then hopefully in 20 years, I'll feel the feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think so if you flip it on its head, And goes to what you were saying. If you start with how do I actually want to feel in life? And for different people, it's going to be very different. Some people they actually want a sense of stability. That's what they crave most for whatever reason it may be. Some genetic wiring, how they grew up, whatever it may be. Some people really want to pursue excellence. Yeah, exactly. But I'm saying, and it's okay. I'm not saying everybody should fight it all the time.
Right.
But some people also want to feel a sense of accomplishment. Like, there's always those people that they always try to drive forward. And it's not from a negative place, but it's just because they like to pursue, like you're a surfer. There's some people that are always on the shoulder and some people that naturally just want to go at the peak of the wave.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's not a negative thing. It's just like, they just like that. That's what thrills them.
Progress feels good for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the big thing. It's like, if you can just figure out what you want from this, how do you want to feel? And then reverse engineered what is required in order to make that happen. And for some people, this job is actually perfect for how I want to feel. I want to just feel like very comfortable. I want to have a sense of security. I want to go to the same coffee shop every day of my life at 8 a.m. and walk the kids to school, whatever it may be. That's phenomenal if they have landed in a spot that fulfills that. However, if it doesn't, that's when there's a problem. And you recognize your emotions are stopping you from what you truly want.
Yeah, absolutely. And so once people understand these, you've got the uncertainty, approval, external approval, and then the internal one. What was the third one? Sorry.
The third one is you seek validation.
Yeah,
you
seeking validation.
Something before you can move.
Yeah. Once people understand those three and they're like, okay, this is the way I'm operating. I want to prevent that. I'm happy to no longer seek approval. I'm happy for some level of uncertainty and some significance, Once they start to move into more uncertainty and going for things because they've built up that ambition to start performing, what are the 3 performance traps? Let's go through those because I'm fascinated by these. I definitely feel like I'm the go harder guy, prove you wrong guy.
Yeah. Yep. It's a phone combination. So I'll put it this way. Whenever we start going outside of our comfort zone, like you said, and it gets to be a bit challenging, we start to feel a little bit of pressure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the biggest misconceptions about performance is that the more pressure you feel, the better you'll be because pressure makes diamonds, right? But the reality is that it's a bell curve. There's a certain amount of pressure where it gets you excited, like, oh, there's a big wave. I want to charge it. There's a big opportunity. And then all of a sudden it gets too much. You're like, oh, wow, I'm in Nazaré right now. And this is something I cannot handle. And you start feeling stressed and overwhelmed.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of the same thing here. Sorry, go ahead. I could tell you want to jump in.
Yeah. I've got the analogy of lifting weights or, sometimes the stress is good. A little bit of stress and a little bit of uncertainty is good. But if you go too far, then it's going to set you back further, than where you even start. And that's the example of burnout in business or whatever it is. Like buying a business, I'm just going to go balls to the wall. I'm going to try and buy it with little to no money down and just over leverage myself, buy this thing and then set myself back even further than I should have or where I was when I first started. Is that what the example in terms of acquisitions?
Basically, it's like you put yourself in a position where all of a sudden that pressure is not optimal. You're not excited about it and a little bit nervous, but you're like, oh crap. And you're just overwhelmed and you're anxious and you're starting to lose sleep. Now, what I've seen is when people fall into that negative part of the bell curve, where it actually leads to underperforming, is that there's 3 common patterns that people fall into because of that. And the reason I think it's important to know that is it's important to know our biases, right? So if you're overly optimistic, that can be dangerous. Over pessimistic, you're going to lose opportunities. So the same thing here is if I know that my steering wheel drifts to the left, I can constantly be monitoring and correcting it. And like you said, there's 3 patterns that you just got to watch out for. So they're the go harder trap, the Mr. Nice Guy trap, and the prove you wrong trap. The Mr. Hard Guy, it's not surprising you said that. Honestly, most of the clients I work with have that. And I'll explain, and there's a paradox in all of these, that there's a positive to them, but they can also just turn into your Achilles heel if they're not monitored correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So the go harder guy, for example, the reason I work with so many successful people and they have that is because they go hard. They know how to push when others won't. And it is a superpower. However, sometimes they don't know when to pull the brake, so to speak, and say, I am just not focused anymore. I'm just grinding away needlessly. And oftentimes it also leads to burnout, like you said. You're not being effective. You're not actually doing it, but it's an emotional compulsion that me just working really hard gives me a sense of security and certainty because I can just control something. And it's an emotional reaction. It's not logically, I know we need to push through. This is great, but no, I need to go.
Wow.
Go for it.
I like how you tied it into it provides you certainty for, going harder because that's what that's what feels good for us as well, right? Is certainty, even if we know that uncertainty can get us to our goals as well, or a certain level of it. It's so cool how it's all woven in what you put together here. Yeah. Everybody knows these examples, like the burnout. And it's kind of like, it seems like it's all a sliding scale, really.
Yeah, it's about monitoring it.
Yeah.
Now, and I'll get to this in the next part after we cover this, but the beauty of it is that I think there's a misconception that the way to avoid these kind of negative behaviors or traps is to lessen your ambition. But it's not about that. Because like we said, it's not about how much you're doing, it's how much pressure you feel. And how you feel, that's something you can manipulate internally. And there's mechanisms to do that. But I want to first say that because the biggest reaction I usually get when I talk about the go harder traps, I'd be like, no, that's what got me here. I can't stop this. I want to keep, don't tell me to like taper down my ambition, which was people would tell me as well at the beginning when I like started figuring out that I'm doing this and it's unhelpful. Tell me, just like chill out a bit, taper your ambitions. Like, I do not want to do that. I still want to conquer really big mountains, so to speak. But it's how do I make myself so that I do these things, but I don't fall into this emotional trap of just wanting to go hard needlessly. Like what I've seen with a lot of clients is that, especially when you're starting out as an entrepreneur, your grit and your determination is basically all you have. You don't have a lot of leverage. You don't have a lot of resources.
You don't have the resources. Yeah.
Yeah. However, if you don't graduate from that mindset and you're constantly at the edge of burnout, when you actually have a big team, when you have a 7-8 figure business, whatever it may be, you're not utilizing them because you're so compromised. You're fatigued and you can't see the lay of the land. And so a lot of times if these guys that fall into the go harder trap, actually being able to strategically back them off just enough for them to see, again, like the lay of the land and think really big, their businesses go to the next level very quickly because they've just been always emotionally like just compromised as far as their energy. They're just sucked into doing small things.
I love that. I've got a perfect example. My ambition was ridiculous in terms of, and I still think it is, but I'm a lot slower now. So the term slow down to speed up, I think lends well to this example. My first 3 years of buying businesses, I bought 3 businesses in 3 years and I had team and they were making money and it was just the Jaryd Krause show because I was a kook. That's just what I knew to do, right? I was just like, just work hard and realize that I bought too many businesses too fast, neglected a bunch of them. And then I was
exciting,
forced,
right?
It was exciting, man. Yeah. Making money and just like getting results. The progress felt so good for my ego. And it got to the point with the burnout thing. And I nearly lost like most of my businesses and I was able to hold on to one. And then so I was forced into it, energetically forced into that. It wasn't me because I'm still in the go hard phase at all costs, literally. Then coming out of that, realizing like, okay, wow, like you said, you've got the resources. You don't need to use yours and have your cups empty. You start using other cups that are, full now. That's a great example I wanted to share because people that want to just buy heaps of businesses and build a portfolios, like it should be staged in the proper way. Like when you buy your second business, maybe you don't just add it on into a portfolio. Maybe you sell the first one and keep your time on and focus on one. Or maybe you use your resources in the first one to set it up to make sure it's systemized with team. So it doesn't require your effort. So then you can have capacity to acquire another one. And the other one is self-ran. And then I shouldn't just say self-ran, but grows on itself, right? You've got systems in place that grow without you versus just trying to do it all yourself. It's crazy, isn't it?
I think also what you're saying here, there's so much wisdom in it that you're basically saying you can't just keep going hard, but you have to figure out what season am I in? Am I in the season of just growing this first business? Then in the season of automating it? What season am I in? Then do a stop. Figure out, okay, what is the next strategic thing I need to do? Do that hard. Great. Push. Then stop. Take a step back for a second. Get the lay of the land. Then what is the next thing? And with the go harder guys, that's the biggest challenge. They oftentimes just emotionally push through exhaustion instead of working hard in strategic bursts. And the strategic bursts, again, like if you like to go hard, go for it, but do it strategically.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even when you do like to go hard and you've had the rest through the particular seasons that you should be resting, when you go hard, you are so much more effective and you are getting far better results by doing so because you're rested, right? Like rest is a big part of the journey.
Yeah. So I'll an interesting little tidbit. I used to hate it when people told me to rest. And I also noticed most of my clients do not like that because it feels very passive.
Yeah.
However, if you simply like what we talked about, the frame of changing it, if you simply say, okay, your goal right now for the next week after you just had a big sprint, you're going to go in active recovery mode. So what we're trying to do is make your brain recover and heal and just get it to a place where it's fully functioning and you're very calm and strategic again. And all of a sudden, just shifting the narrative. It's not that you're just resting and being passive, but you're doing something, you're recovering. It's amazing how that little mindset trick just allows us to freedom say, okay, I'm recovering now. This is good. I'm all right. This isn't just being lazy.
Isn't it funny that for somebody that is a go hard person, that is the easy thing. To go hard is just like my default is just set to that. Like if you want me to go hard, that's not a problem. Like I can just click my fingers and it's done. The hard bit is, whoa, you want me to just be patient and rest? Like I'm recovering a knee injury from surfing, and my challenge is just don't do anything. Like rest that thing. And it's funny that on the opposite side, the feeling that I have of the challenge that can be to rest, opposite was true for somebody that might be a Mr. Nice Guy, where they're like, the challenge is for me to go really, really hard because I don't want to like step on toes or something like that. Would you say that's
I'll offer a bit of a different thought. So I'll put it this way. All the people that I work with, and I'm also saying this is my limitation. If someone isn't very driven or motivated, I can't really help them. That's not my specialty. But what happens is that you get a lot of people that actually are very driven. They want to succeed. They want to have a lot of results. And they also fall into the Mr. Nice Guy thing. Where there's a part of them that wants to push, but it's like, how do I do that without also having people be upset at me? So like they avoid the tough conversations. And the negotiations, they'll back down. But just make sure like, are you happy? Are you happy? Is everyone happy? And then they end up with the short end of the stick, so to speak. So again, they want to achieve really big things, but that's their emotional trap that causes their judgment to get compromised.
So you can have all three of these, basically. Not so much.
Usually people feel like 2 out of the 3, and with one dominant one, like how you said, you feel the go harder guy plus to prove you wrong trap.
Yeah.
But usually you can have 2 of the 3. Like a great example I actually give of the Mr. Nice Guy was a client, and he's willing to share this publicly. We put him in the book, is Ben. And he had all the skills to acquire multiple businesses, so to speak. He was working as a virtual like CFO. Yeah. And he's also Australian as well. And he was doing this for a lot of smaller businesses. And all of a sudden we realized like you could just be doing the CFOing thing for a lot of bigger businesses. And he was like, that could work because I have the skill. And like, just charge more, you get more leverage. And he did that. And then at one point during the coaching, I asked him, Ben, what would be the highest ability to utilize your skills in the marketplace? And he kind of went away and he thought about it. And he said, I think I could buy businesses. He's like, I know how to run businesses. I understand the finance of it. Like I help people literally do this. Okay. So if it wasn't about helping people, but about helping yourself first, how would you start buying businesses? And just that little switch, like he had everything in place, all the skills, the desire, and so on. He now has an 8-figure portfolio of companies. This is like 2 years later. And this is the thing with the Mr. Nice Guy a lot of times, that even if you're driven, but that part of you, again, I'm going to say that part of you drives you to actually make sure everyone else is accommodated for first, you're going to miss out. And even if you're a Mr. Nice Guy and you say, you know what, but like my relationship building is amazing, it's great, it's a superpower, like great. If that is, it's true. But don't let it also become your downfall. Make sure it's a win-win, like what you were saying earlier. It's a win-win, not that they win and you lose, but at least you feel like, they think I'm a good person. That doesn't help you, and it eventually builds resentment.
I also think that you should, like him going away and filling his cup up first, he then becomes a far more valuable resource for everybody else that he's worked with before by focusing on himself first and putting his life jacket on first, versus like by being Mr. Nice Guy, you are doing others a disservice by not focusing on yourself because you're less valuable to them.
Yeah, and also put it like what I've seen a lot is that it just builds blowouts. The Mr. Nice Guys are usually the ones that end up either having big blowouts with their partner's business or personal because resentment gets built up. They're not comfortable speaking what they want. They put themselves to the side, and all of a sudden that pressure cooker just boils, and something explodes.
Absolutely.
It's just like all these things, whether it's go harder or whether it's to be Mr. Nice Guy, they're not sustainable approaches to elite performance. And what you were saying earlier, elite performance, it's just all about results. It's not about what feels good. It's not an ice bath. It's not being motivated. It's what actually creates a concrete result in your business and your life. something tangible that is measurable. And
Yeah.
these things are just not effective ways to do that.
We haven't touched on the prove you wrong guy very much. Would you like to share maybe an example of a prove you wrong person?
Yep, happy to share. So prove you wrong person, we had Bill. So Bill, and this is in the book as well, Bill was already in his 50s when I met him. He was actually giving a great keynote the first time I saw him. And it was a conference we were both speaking at. And afterwards, he came up to me and he was like, dude, I want to chat a little bit. Like, I've always been pushing things through. I build a business, I'll knock doors down. And then at a certain point, things kind of crumble. He's like, I get overworked, I stretch myself thin, and everyone just gets stressed out and things stall. Basically, Bill had a very challenging childhood where he was not treated well by extended members of the family. And he learned that the only way for him to get validation, like we were saying in our approval was by doing really, really hard things. So as a boy, he understood that not a logical adult, as a boy, like in order for me to get approval and to get the emotions that I want to feel, I have to do really, really hard things. So what happened is that every time in his business, when there was, like I say, the most direct path, the simplest way that would look like a shortcut and would just actually be really easy to get the result versus something that would be very complicated, but would prove how smart and capable he is without recognizing he defaulted to. And that's the thing with the prove you wrong chap a lot of times. You avoid taking the effective shortcuts because you just want to do something that proves how smart and capable you are. And when you're already a bit stressed, a bit emotionally compromised and tired, that's again when you fall into these traps.
Yeah, wow. It's because you're still operating from the lens of the boy that needs to prove something wrong or seek approval. Yeah, wow.
Like, this is also mine as well. Like I share this in the book. Like I had a pretty big failure early on in the military and it put a big chip on my shoulder. And a lot of times this was a big part of my 20s. I was not aware at all that this was happening, but my actions were that of somebody who wants to prove a point, not somebody who wants to take the easiest path to their success. I purposely made things harder than they need to be without recognizing it, just to show that I can do hard things. And again, it's not helpful. It can waste years of your life and just cause needless agitation.
Yeah. I mean, it's just you're operating from a place of fear, really.
Yeah.
And when you're operating from a place of fear, you're not very logical, and it's just going to cause some serious unfun experiences. Well, probably
and
most
unproductive behaviors, poor results as well. It's kind of let's put it this way: I'm a very practical individual, especially with how I coach, and it's all about getting people results. At the end of the day, these behaviors, they don't get you results in your business or in your life. They make you feel, again, like how we said, a little bit of emotional comfort. Like I get comfort from being nice to everybody, everyone liking me. I get comfort from just like feeling like I have a sense of control because I'm working so hard. I don't even step back to figure out what's going on. Or I get a sense of comfort from, I know that I must be super smart if I can do this way, which is really hard and complicated, but it's not effective. And if people can understand these emotional biases and overcome them, they can achieve so much more with less effort.
Yeah, I love that. That's why, guys, check out the book. It's on Itamar's site, itamarmarani.com/book. I'm going to put links to that in the show notes. Also a link to our last podcast episode 240, which I think is going to be valuable. Listen to them both, or listen to the first one if you're just finishing this one. Itamar, any closing words? I'm so grateful for you that you came on, and really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I want to leave people with a little bit of a cookie crumb because what you're saying about fear. So I often ask this like when I give keynotes, what is fear? Everybody has this, false evidence appearing real, all that kind of jazz. At the end of the day, fear is just a belief that someone or something is likely to cause us harm or be a threat. It's just a belief. So what is a belief, right? And a belief is just something that you hold to be true for you. And if you can get to the root of that and figure out what are the beliefs that I hold that cause me to think this situation, if there's uncertainty about it, it's going to be dangerous. Or if I don't have, if I'm not validated to go ahead, it's going to really lead to my demise. You can get down to that source of what is the belief that is triggering that emotional reaction that causes the pressure, that causes us to go into these performance traps. It's not about getting motivated and saying I feel like I want to go harder, but how do I push myself not to do it? But all of a sudden, you don't feel those things as much, so you don't have to get as motivated. You're just operating from a much more clear foundation. And obviously, this is something that we shared in the book, the exact step-by-step process to do that. So if this has been relevant so far, we literally tried to give everything we possibly could away in the book, and please go ahead and check it out.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate you. Everybody who's listening, thanks for listening.